Hey, what's up, Bart? This is Doug. I had a hand for Maryland Live last week. I was hoping you could help me out with.
Okay, Maryland Live, from my understanding, from what I remember, has a 2-5-1000 cap structure. Is that correct?
Correct.
I actually played at Maryland Live once. I flew in from on a private plane, a Cessna. It was kind of fun. I bartered a poker lesson with a flight instructor, and we flew down the Hudson, buzzed the new World Trade Center towers, and then landed right in BWI. It was quite a thing. But that was, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. Nice room. So 2-5, 1K cap, no limit. Okay.
Correct. So we're playing seven-handed. It's with the plexiglass.
Oh, man, plexiglass.
We're about 1,400 effective, the main villain and myself.
Okay.
I'm under the gun, and I look down at the ace of spades and the king of hearts. So I make a 5x raise and make it 25 to go.
Okay.
Typical raise sizes vary between 25 and 15. So nothing out of the ordinary, especially in early position. Low jack folds, hijack flats, who's the main villain, cutoff folds, button folds, small blind folds, big blind folds. So $57 in the pot. It's just that main villain and myself minus the rake.
So 5x, pretty, I mean, it's interesting how the raise sizes will vary from location to location, like a little bit at that game of death that I played at the Red Rock for a few months when I lived in Vegas at the end of last year, where people made it 15. And then, of course, you'll see other times like in TCH where guys will make it 30 or 40. That first open size really dictates the size of the game. But you're saying 25 was pretty much standard.
Yeah. This was on a Wednesday afternoon. So in my experience, the wildness doesn't happen till like Saturday or Friday night when people have been drinking. So even though it's higher than say 15, it was fairly common for there to be a 25 open from early position.
Okay. All right, go to the flop.
So the flop comes out the ace of clubs,
Mm-hmm.
five of diamonds,
Mm-hmm.
and the four of spades.
So ace, 5-4 rainbow, you have ace of spades, king of hearts, and your heads up against the hijack, so you're out of position, okay?
Yep. So I flop top. I'm feeling pretty good. The villain who I'm against, I've never played with before. He just came over from the must move. He's been there for maybe 10 hands. VPIP seems to be fairly normal with him, so I don't have any reads on him. Sometimes with new players, I like to get a little bit trappy or passive, and I'm thinking normally I'd make a standard C bet of 2/3 pot, but maybe I'll check it over to him to see if he interprets that as weakness and bets into me. So I do just that. I check, and he thinks, and he bets $40, which is about 2/3 pot, maybe a little bit more. And I think about it for a minute, not immediately, but I eventually decide to flat.
So you check, and he bets 40?
Yes.
And hero calls. I mean, sometimes you want to check, multi-way. Sometimes you want to check on certain types of boards, even with top pair, to sort of protect your checking range. And, the theory is that if you're always going to bet off over pairs, like on a ragged board, like 6, 7, 8 or something like that, then when you check, you never really have anything. And also to multi-way, and, you have to have respect for the texture of the board and the range of the field callers. In this particular scenario, with you having a very tight open range from up front and on this textured board, I don't think that I would really be doing a lot of checking here, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, I guess you could throw it in once in a while, but is there some history with this guy that made you think you were going to do this?
No history. If I were playing against any of the other players at the table, I would have made my standard C bet, but for some reason here, I just decided to make a more passive approach. I was thinking maybe he has a mid-lane pair, maybe he has something like ace-jack, and he could just value own himself throughout the hand. So,
well, I mean, my issue with that is that he's not. I mean, if you're not going to take the betting lead away, you're going to lose. You're not going to get as much value against an inferior ace like ace jack, because it's not going to go for 3 streets. Once you go check call, there's going to be you're going to see a reflection of check behind at the end. That's why I would just go across 3 streets on many different types of runouts. I mean, not all runouts, right? I mean, that's sort of my thinking. That's
Yeah.
why I probably wouldn't check this hand. But okay, so you check call 40. So the pot's 137. Okay.
Yes. So the turn comes and it's the 6 of clubs. So the board's ace of clubs, 5 of diamonds, 4 spades. I'm sorry, the turn is the 5 of spades. So
Okay.
ace of clubs, 5 of diamonds, 4 spades, and 5 of spades. So puts 2 spades out there.
Yep.
It puts puts a pair out there. So I have aces up, top kicker. I'm feeling pretty good, but I'm also kind of continuing my story with my passive approach. Maybe I'm thinking that he's thinking that I don't have an ace or I have a middling pair and he could continue to just push me around. So even though I'm feeling pretty good, I decide to check again. And maybe he actually does have an ace and he'll just value own himself a little bit further. So I check. He, I wouldn't say he tanks, but he thinks for a little bit, and then he throws out a bet of 100. Again, it's, 2/3 pot.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think a little bit, thought about raising, but I also ended up flatting here.
Okay, I think the way that this hand is played out, it would be kind of strange to check call and then lead turn. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you thought that you possibly might be inducing a bluff or something like that. The 5 in this particular configuration isn't terribly relevant. For him possibly having like 5-6 suited that wasn't already 2-pair on the flop in the form of 5-4, having like ace-5 here. So it doesn't concern me as much. Like I would definitely, if I had started betting flop, I'm going to continue probably for 3 streets, especially when this card pairs under the gun versus a flat from the hijack. Of course, this is much different than if you had, say, opened from the button with ace king and the big blind had completed. There you have to be much more careful as a reflection, especially when middle pair pairs on the turn. But as played, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to check call and then lead out. So when he bets, 100, obviously, I would say the play here is to call. If you really, really want to get crazy with it, you might even consider check raising the turn. I know that's kind of like out to left field for some people, but your hand is so strong on this board with this configuration, and the combinations of better hands are just really not all that prevalent, and you beat ace-4 now. I'm just concerned here that if you check call turn here and then the river you check and the guy checks back ace-jack, ace-10, and you lose out. That's why I don't necessarily like to give the lead to my opponent. The other thing too is that I guess it's possible, like if I had a hand like 6-7 suited, that I might bet twice to try to get you off of a pair between like 8 and an ace. So I can see it could be viable that the guy could be double barreling in this particular spot as a bluff with some sort of equity. So the pot's 337. Let's go to the river.
Yeah, so the river is at 6 of clubs. So the board reads ace of clubs, 5 of diamonds, 4 of spades, 5 of spades, and 6 of clubs now.
Okay. So ace 5 4 5 6, right?
Yes.
Yep.
So I sit there and evaluate the board a little bit. I think about the play on the prior streets, and I decide to just kind of check over to the guy, hoping that he'll fire out another 2/3 pot bet or so. I'll probably just snap call that off. And if he has a 5, he has a 5, but more than likely he has an ace and I have him out kicked. So I continue with my passive approach and check it over to him.
Before you tell me with what he does, I'm just going to examine how the river fits into these ranges here. 7-8, right, is a hand that gets there, which is a gut shot. Like if you had like 7-8 suited, 3-4 is pretty far out there for somebody to call. 3-4 would be the bottom end of a straight draw that might continue to bet. And of course you lose to ace-6 now, but it's really debatable whether ace-6 is going to go bet and then bet turn for this type of sizing. So I'm just sort of, or like some weird hand like 6s that was bluffing flop and turn. So it doesn't really change, a ton here in this spot. Okay, so you check.
Yeah, so I check. I'm feeling pretty good. Pot's 330-ish or so,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm probably just going to call his bet, whatever he bets, insta call. And he thinks about it for a short time, and he goes all in for the rest of his 1,400 effective stack.
So hijack moves all in,
Yeah,
and that is for basically, well, you put 100 here on the turn, 140, 165. So like for 1230-ish, something like that.
yeah.
1230 all in. 1230 all in into a pot of 337, right?
Into that small pot, yes.
Well, I mean, that's pretty wild. I mean, I have to say that's pretty wild. A 4x overbet or 3.5x overbet here. This is where there's a guy that's probably going to have a call. We're probably going to take his call next week. And he had a question about solvers and how that plays into live poker and stuff. And, sometimes people use solvers correctly. Sometimes they misuse them. I'm always interested to know what the output would be in an optimal sort of scenario, in something that's out of the box that I wouldn't commonly see here in live poker. Because what ends up happening is that, and this is where solvers I think kind of get effective or become really effective in live poker, even if people aren't playing anywhere close to optimals. Because when you see some of these out of the box plays, and then you see the hands that are supposed to be called with, the hands that are supposed to be bluffed from your opponent's perspective, and you start to learn. You actually learn a little bit about, what you're supposed to call down with to such a large sort of bet size. Like, I don't know what the answer is. Here's my thoughts. My thoughts are that you normally are going to have, I guess you could have holding on for queens and kings here. You're sort of at the top of your range here.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's possibly better if he's so polarized here that it might be
Yeah.
better if you have like ace 7 or ace 8 to call with as opposed to ace king. Because the reason why, for some of you beginners out there, why that is because your opponent is basically representing a hand that's better than ace king. So when you get into a situation that's polarizing and your opponent is basically representing something better than what is top, then it doesn't matter in terms of your hand value if you have ace king or ace 7. So then we start to look at sort of blocking properties of super nuttish types of hands. And, we already talked about how fives really aren't represented all that much. So I would feel like you'd want to have like ace 7, ace 8, and also not have a spade in your hand. This is in an optimal setting that would optimally continue a backdoor bluff, although the ace of spades kind of interesting because the ace is already out there. I don't really know here. I mean, if you don't know the guy, I feel like this is a pretty underbluff spot. If you literally don't know him, I can tell you've got one of the best hands that you can have here. And I would say probably like in an equilibrium type sense, it's a call. Whether or not I make the call, I mean, honestly, if I'm playing 2-5, 1K cap, not that the game size matters, and I don't know the players at all, I would just look at the combinations and I think I would call here, but it's probably really close. And it would be interesting if someone ran a solution into it about if the solver says ace 7 or ace 8 is more of a call here, because really from this configuration, you really do have one of the best hands that you're ever going to have. What ended up happening here?
Yeah, so I tanked for a while, thought through maybe he could have ace 5, maybe he could have pocket 4s, but I just thought there was so much junk he could have, and I evaluated it, and it was just such a massive overbet that I kind of flipped my cards over so he could see before I made my decision to see if I could get a read off of him. I couldn't really, and then I ended up just mucking my cards. It just seemed like it was too much risk, even though I think I had him beat.
And did you ever find out what he had?
Yeah, so two things there. He only stayed for about 10 more hands, and as soon as he walked up and left, I grabbed him, and his exact words were, "Oh man, I had air there. I had queen 8 offsuit," which really doesn't make a lot of sense. Why are you flattening the hijack a 5x open? So I don't really believe that. And then I also talked with a for-profit player who was at the table that time, and he said that this guy commonly makes these 2-3x river shoves, and if he were in my shoes, he would have just did a crying call there and called him off. So,
well, if he's commonly doing these 2 to 3x shoves, then I mean, we don't from an equilibrium standpoint, we don't know if he's balanced. What I would tell you from a live standpoint, and I see people in live chat saying, "Oh, if we don't know this guy, unless he's a maniac, I wouldn't call." Well, this sort of dictates that he has this sort of in his game plan. So there are bluffs. Because if a guy's only doing it with value 2 to 3x like jams and stuff at the end, then you probably wouldn't see him do it that much, right? Because there's not that many strong hands, right? And hold them. So that would sort of lend me towards calling here as well. But we'll probably put this one up in a YouTube video and someone can maybe run the solution. I think it's kind of interesting. Like I said, on the surface, I feel like I kind of want to call, but it's quite interesting. I appreciate the call. Thank you very much.
Yep.
If you like what you've seen here, please hit the subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this call in hand, hit the like button down below. To check out crushlivepoker.com, click on the link in the description. Use the code YTA300 to get the first 30 days for free.